Thank you so much for all that are joining in. We are going live. We're live now, and we have a great gift that's with us today. We'll introduce her shortly, but we're really excited about having one of our guests on with us. Her name is Elizabeth. We call her Liz. She's a part of the Iris family. We love her so dearly. And you've been seeing a little flyer floating around with her beautiful face on it as a prior entrepreneur student, but also as a business owner. So we're going to give about 30 more seconds for others to join the live, and then we're going to start it. So thank you again for joining. And go ahead and show some love. So if you want to put some comments down below, if you want to share this live so that it can empower other young people, we would appreciate that. Share it, heart it, show some love to our amazing guest, Elizabeth. All right, let's get started. So again, we're so excited. My name is Shaniqua Moore, and I am excited to hold this live fireside talk with all of you, and I hope that you get something substantial from this conversation. Our goal really is to uplift the voices of our young people and to put them in a center where they belong and to give them the platform that they deserve. So with us today, we have Lisbeth Espana, and she again is a former iRaise Entrepreneur Academy student. And she's going to be sharing her amazing story and her innovative solution that she has created and designed for the world to fight against climate change. She is a female, she is a Latina, and she is from New York City. So we're excited. We are so honored to have her with us today. Today's topic will be focused on youth entrepreneurship. Youth entrepreneurship is so vital and so essential, especially to our communities of color, where our kids traditionally don't get access to these types of supports and resources. At iRaise, we provide an Entrepreneur Academy so that kids have access and so that they learn the foundations of how to start a company, how to market a company, how to run a company, and how to create wealth from a company that they create. So this is an amazing economic opportunity, and we're actually running a number of sessions in the next 2 weeks. So we're going to do an open call at the very end of this live for parents or for guardians or caregivers, or maybe you're a social worker or an advocate for young people. You want to get this information to them. You're going to want to get them to register for this class because it's really going to help catapult them to their next level to be able to start their company. And it doesn't matter if they have a company or just an idea. If they're interested in entrepreneurship, we want to cultivate that interest. So send them over to us. Let us help them and train them. So let's get started. Lisbeth Espana, she was one of my students. I had the privilege of teaching her over the last Entrepreneur Academy. Actually, not the last, but the year before last, right in the height of the pandemic. She was one of my students, one of my favorite students, and I probably shouldn't say that, but I want to also be honest. One of my favorite students, always very inquisitive, always took her time when asked questions, very analytical, contributed so much to the classroom space, and such a leader amongst her peers. Elizabeth graduated recently from the High School of Environmental Studies, and she is an incoming freshman at Queens College. So she's a college student now. So give it up for Liz for being a college student. Elizabeth, in her senior year, she actually won the robotics championship. And she is a Latina woman in STEM. So we have to give her flowers for making her impact in the field of STEM and continuing to influence. For many women that also need to see her in that role so that they too can be inspired. Elizabeth Espana, I apologize, she created an amazing company called Seedless. And Seedless incorporates aeroponics into the classroom, She is passionate about environmental issues and she is an environmentalist. So she uses that passion to really help and share that knowledge with students in the classroom. So her company teaches students about climate and environmental issues, and her goal is to empower future generations. So through teach and aeroponics, this system that she's teaching and this model is very groundbreaking because it is an alternative way to fight climate change. It is a sustainable way where you can grow plants from water. So I'm excited to hear from you, Liz, to hear about your story and all about your company. So I want us again to welcome Liz. And my first question I want to start with is, Liz, tell us your story. What is your story? Tell us about that and tell us more about Seedless.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Moore. So yeah, as she said, I was honored to have her, Miss Moore, as my teacher. It's awesome to have a teacher that is a CEO that sort of knows the path of entrepreneurship. But yeah, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I am a strong environmentalist, and I was just growing up. I grew up like in nature, and I just love being outdoors. And just sort of as I grew up, I sort of learned more about the climate issues, and it's sort of heartbreaking. And and now I'm just sort of doing everything in my power to sort of protect our earth. So I grew up with my grandparents. And they had this farm, and they grew their own crops, and they raised their own animals. They had cows, pigs, and I was just sort of surrounded by that environment. And that's, I would say, was the seed to my journey in entrepreneurship, in being an environmentalist. And from there, I just sort of grew and grew and grew, and learned more about just climate, like our climate issues. And yeah.
That's amazing, Liz. And so you were talking about the environmental aspect of how you grew up. Can you tell us a little more about that? Where you was that in New York, or was it in another environment? And then to a second part of that question would be, um, tell us how that sort of increased your awareness of how important environment is.
Yeah, so um it really began during high school. I took a couple of environmental classes just because it just piqued my interest. And I went to school, high school for environmental studies, so I sort of centered on being environmentally friendly. And we had a ton of environmental classes, and I just from there, I took some of the classes, and just I was sort of intrigued with it. It didn't feel like work to me. It felt more like one of my passions that I wanted to continue pursuing learning. I also was part of my high school's um, rooftop garden club. All 4 years of the all four of my years, even during the pandemic, we actually got an internship to work on my rooftop gardening club. So we maintained a rooftop, and it just sort of, I was there with a ton of my friends, and we were there maintaining the plants and the garden.
That's super amazing that you have that passion. And, you said something that's really powerful. You said it didn't feel like work, it was just something you wanted to do. So it sounds like you found that passion through school, and you recognize that a part of that was really stemmed from growing up and being exposed to being in a farm and having and seeing like your grandparents have all these animals and how much of a difference that has made in your life. Did you want to say any more about that?
Yeah. So as I said, I grew up in a farm, and well, grew up surrounded by like farms, but um, I eventually moved to New York City, and there's two. It's very different.
Very
Just
different.
yeah, completely different. And at first, it was sort of like a large change, but change is good. And at first, I didn't really like. the change was sort of very, very hard for me. Like that move was very big. But now I have a balcony outside of my room, and I grow a ton of my plants. And
Amazing.
I think that's one thing that comes with change is sort of being resilient, and also just sort of trying to um, yeah, just being resilient. I mean, I grew grew up where I had a ton of space, and now I don't really have much space because I live in an apartment. But I do what I can to sort of keep in touch with who I am, and who I am is sort of a gardener, and I love growing plants. So as like I don't really have much space, but I use it all up to maintain my plants.
That's amazing, and I love it. Like, as you're speaking about it, I feel your heart, I see your passion for this issue, and I want you to talk now. Tell us more about your model. You have a solution for climate change. You're a teen entrepreneur. You have something sustainable and innovative, and we want to hear more about that model. So can you dig a little deeper into the model for us and tell us what it looks like?
Right. As I said, I grew up in a farm where I sort of had access to a lot of land, and I made this drastic change to New York City, and and I sort of saw where our food was coming from and how our food was grown, and I just sort of learned more about like the production of the food system and how our food sort of is grown from a farm and then transported to New York City where I live, or just transported to large cities. And one of the major issues in climate change is transportation.
Hmm.
So there's if it has a ton of it like a lot of fossil fuel and carbon dioxide is sort of released into the air, and is that's a major issue to climate change. And I just sort of saw that issue, and now that I'm in New York City, I see that everywhere we're surrounded by buildings,
Yeah,
and I just sort of wanted to find a way to grow plants in New York City so I can cut down on the transportation cost and
it's amazing.
transportation the effects of transportation, so that the increase in carbon dioxide, increase in carbon emissions. And the awesome thing about my company that incorporates aeroponics is that it's able to be grown indoors.
Wow.
So we can build up, so we can get a building, and we can have there's many levels to a building, and we can use all that space to grow plants.
So what you're saying, Liz, is we have all these buildings. It's very industrial and New York City, and we know space is always an issue. But with your innovative solution, space is not a problem because we can utilize balconies essentially to grow plants. So whether we're in a building or we're in a residential facility, we can utilize the space we have to grow these plants. And what happens? What's the benefits of the value? Can you talk a little more about what that looks like for us as a city if we were to adopt this model that you are providing in our buildings, in those higher buildings? What would it look like? How would it change things for us?
Right. So me personally, I really, really love to be surrounded by plants. And I think that's sort of one of the benefits of incorporating aeroponics into certain areas. And what I'm doing is incorporating aeroponics into classrooms, and incorporating also an environmental class session with it. So it's not only aeroponics, but it's also targets many environmental issues that are affecting us today. And sort of some of the benefits of aeroponics, it's uses significantly less, even though it's grown plants are grown on water, it uses 99% less water than regular agriculture, which is huge. So the awesome thing about aeroponics is that the water is recycled and recycled, and um, it grows so many plants from just a couple gallons of water, which is awesome. So it
Wow.
significantly reduces the amount of water used in growing plants. And on top of that, it's a lot more nutritious because we're able to control the environment, and we're able to control sort of the nutrition in the water that grows the plants and makes it more. nutritious and honestly taste a little better from what I'm from personal experience.
So there's so many benefits to this, and a lot of it sounds like it's health. We know that health, especially in minorities, people of color, has there's a lot of disparities, and it sounds like this could also be a solution, not just to climate change, but the value of this really is to also improve the health of minorities and also the mental health. You talked about mental illness being one of those difficulties and struggles that this may also be able to combat. So it sounds like this is bringing so many value, so many benefits to our community. So I love that, Liz. Did you want to say a little more about that?
Yeah, I just sort of wanted to emphasize that I am a big advocate for mental health, um, for people who are struggling with mental health, and it's a very important issue for me. And personally, I am a vegetarian, and I didn't grow up having necessarily like the best diet, and I think that does come back to sort of um, my upbringing. I didn't like um, I sort of ate a lot of chips. Ate a lot of candy, and for me, that was sort of natural. And I didn't really feel the best until
Hmm.
I like grew up and I went to high school, and I sort of changed my diet from eating like junk food to eating a lot more sustainable foods and eating a lot more produce. And I think that is sort of one of my um, one thing that made me want to incorporate aeroponics into classrooms specifically was so I can teach students about foods. And we can't grow chips in aeroponics, but we can grow like tomatoes, we can grow
I love it.
lettuce, and we can I can just share like maybe some recipes with the students, and
That's
maybe can
amazing.
encourage them to eat more healthy and a little more sustainably.
I love that, Liz. So it sounds like we're getting some delicious food from these from aeroponics, where our mental health is improving, our bodies are improving, our climate is improving. So it really is a holistic solution that you're creating and that you've created. So we're excited about this. I want to hear more about some of the barriers or struggles that you've encountered, right? So you're a young Latina female entrepreneur. And for those that may be inspiring to or looking up to you as a leader, tell us more about what those obstacles were that you've had to overcome and that you may even be dealing with now as a teen entrepreneur.
Yeah, a lot of it does come down to my age, I would say. I think um, a lot of entrepreneurs are a lot older than I am, and sort of when I speak with people, they sort of look the other way just because of my age, and they just think that I'm very young and ambitious, but and that I just won't necessarily accomplish all the things that I'm saying that I want to accomplish. And I think that's a really really big issue today. But I'm thankful enough to have support from amazing people like Miss Moore, who doesn't look the other way, and she wants to help me in any way she can, and sort of as two women just sort of grow and be successful together.
I love that, Liz. Absolutely. You know I love you, right?
I love you too.
I'm here to push you to purpose, and our goal really is to get this model to as many schools as possible and to scale it because we believe in it. We believe in your vision. And you said something that was very crucial, and that was your age, right? So age being a factor. Sometimes when we look at young people, as young and vibrant as you, for the most part, we're not taking you serious. That is one of our largest, that's one of the largest errors that we can make, right? When we're thinking of solutions or how to help our kids, we need to hear. We need to listen to you. We need to elevate your voice. And when you speak, we have to be able to hear and to value it. So I'm happy that you brought that up. Can you tell us, because you mentioned this a little before we started live, but even being a female of color and STEM, what does that feel like for you? Are Are there any barriers that you faced as a female of color in STEM that you would want to share, bring to our attention?
Yeah, a lot of it is definitely one of them is age, but also it's sort of being a female today, and it's very very difficult, especially for both in my STEM career and in my entrepreneur career. I think I also get overlooked a lot just because I am a woman um, in both areas, and it's sucks obviously, but um, I think it just sort of makes me work harder and just sort of want to prove people wants to prove people more, and that I'm a lot more knowledgeable than I look, and that I can do a lot more than it seems. I think also for an entrepreneur, my entrepreneur path, like no one in my family has ever gone through that route, and it's a big struggle just because I don't really have anyone in my family that can depend on to like ask them certain questions or ask for help for anything or advice for anything that I need help with. But
Right.
thanks to this academy, I got certain resources like Miss Moore where I'm able to text her, email her and certain questions that I have, and I have that guidance from Miss Moore and many other people.
So that's super amazing. And of course, my line is always open to you to support and guide you. But you also said something that I want to highlight and lift up. Um, and that was being the first, right? Being the first in your family and being that trailblazer being a trailblazer, we hear it a lot, shattering glass ceilings, which is what you're doing, Liz. You're shattering glass ceilings for your family, for the young girls that are going to come after you, for girls in your community, for girls in New York City, and for girls around the world, essentially, right? But being a trailblazer often feels a little stressful because you're the first, right? And there's so much pressure in being the first of anything and really blazing that trail for others to follow. So thank you for highlighting that and advice for young women that may not have that example in their immediate family, that may not be able, like you said, Liz, to have a mom or a dad or auntie or someone to call and say, I'm interested in starting this business. Can I ask you a question? They may not have that resource. And sometimes not having that may discourage them from even starting a company. Would you give any advice to those kids?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like that. I mean, before this academy, as I said, I didn't have anyone to look up to, and I think sort of signing up for this academy was sort of like I had a lot of fear to it. I think a lot of it is because I just am the first. And just for advice, just to give some advice, I think just go for it, honestly. It's going to be stressful, and it's not going to be always glamorous, and you may not succeed as many times as you want to. You may fail a lot more times than you succeed with that. But if you're truly passionate about something, I think you should go for it and continue doing and working very, very hard to achieve your goals. I think you shouldn't just give up on the first try. Just continue, and eventually you will see success. And I believe in you.
I love that, Liz. That's so powerful. You mentioned failure, right? Being and one of my a lot when I teach entrepreneurship a lot, I talk about the law of failure. And for one of the major things that stops people from starting a company is fear of failing, right? They're afraid. It's not money. It's fear that I'm going to fail. It's fear that I'm not going to succeed in this. And so it's one of the number one things that seal us from our vision to be able to fulfill that vision and what it is that we want to do, what we're passionate about. But you said something so crucial. It doesn't matter. You may not succeed the first 25 times, but you will succeed eventually, right? And then failing doesn't mean you are a failure. So if you fail, it's just a lesson. It's almost paid tuition to success. So failing is essentially your tuition to get to where you want to be in terms of your success as an entrepreneur. So failing, if we look at it from another stance, then we will gain the confidence that we need to start our companies and to work on our vision, because we know that we might get no's, we may get a whole bunch of no's, but eventually we will get a yes. And that's the spirit of entrepreneurship, Liz. So you embody that spirit. You embody the spirit of entrepreneurs, right? The ability to take risk, right? To take risk on behalf of the things that you care about. And that's what entrepreneurship is taking a risk. You don't know where it's going to land you, but you know you're passionate about this. You know you have a solution, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're leaping and you're taking that risk. And it sounds like that's what you've done too. Awesome. Tell us about the class. You started talking about it a little bit, Liz. Tell us what are some of the things that you remember learning from the class, so that you can share it with those that are listening. Hopefully, there might be parents that are listening and that are thinking about signing their kids up, or maybe even teenagers listening to this live. Tell us about some things that you learned that you want to share.
Yeah, so for the Entrepreneur Academy, it was an amazing program. So I learned so much from the program, and I think one of the biggest things to me starting my company was definitely because of the program. There's sort of like a structure of how to start from the beginning to sort of create an actual business plan, which is something we did in my class. We created a business plan and we pitched our business idea to certain people, and I think that was honestly so incredible because my idea sort of kind of got brought to life. And even though I'm not um, sort of pursuing that business idea, it led me to my own business idea. And I think I love the class just because it gave me a community to be a part of. I think we were all like-minded individuals, and it's sort of hard as a high school student to sort of find people who were interested in going to their entrepreneur class. I was 16 at the time when I took the
Mhm.
class, and not many of my friends were in a journey of entrepreneurship. And I think I loved this class just because the students there truly, truly wanted to be an entrepreneur and or wanted to pursue their career. And I think that's a big benefit of joining an IRA's Entrepreneur Academy.
You're super amazing, Liz. We appreciate that. So you talked about that community of entrepreneurs like-minded. Sometimes, entrepreneurship could be a lonely path, right? Because you have to spend time on your vision. If you have a vision and you believe in it, you can't, it's almost like a baby, right? You got to feed it. You can't just leave the baby crying. The baby wants milk, the baby needs to be changed, the baby needs to be loved. That's what vision is. It's like a baby. You're nurturing that baby. So essentially what you've done over the years, Liz, is you've nurtured the baby, that vision that was inside of you, and it takes time to do that. So when you're in the class, you're surrounded by a community of like-minded teens, like Liz said, that wants to cultivate that vision, that wants to nurture the baby, and then you learn from each other. So you learn from your peers. They have ideas that maybe the teacher doesn't have, that they also contribute. So I'm so happy that you got this amazing information from the class. And for those that are considering to take the class or are already registered, can you give any advice to those kids?
Yeah. Um, Firstly, it's a great, I've said it so many times, but it was a great program. I started, I think, a couple classes late, but don't be scared to join. It is like it's a great community of people that are gonna uplift you. And just some advice, just again, as I said, go for it. If you have an idea, a business idea, or you feel like deep down you want to have an entrepreneur career or path, I think this is a great way to start. And as she said, you might not learn everything in the academy, but it's a start, and it might be the push to your successful entrepreneur journey.
That's super amazing, Liz. Can you tell us how, if someone is interested in donating to your company or helping you, how can they reach you? Can you give any information for people to follow you at all?
I just have my email.
That's
Yeah. So my email is lisbethespana10@gmail.com, and you can reach me anytime. I respond to emails frequently. So yeah.
You're such a businesswoman.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you. Let's put our hands together that are watching live for Miss CEO Elizabeth Espana of Seed Liz. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining us in today's live fireside chat. We're going to have some other students joining us next week as we prep for our Entrepreneur Academy this summer. We appreciate you. We hope to have you back and hear more about the great work. We know that you're partnering with iRaise this fall, so we're excited about partnering with you and supporting your vision, and we're looking forward to having you back. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you so much. And can you drop in the chat, Kristen, the registration for parents and for social workers to register their kids? Thank you all for watching. Please stay tuned next week.